story. The game starts with Lex Luthor, Superman, and let's dig into Superman Adventures, the invention of the Dark Shadows, and see if we can figure out just what the hell is going on. You answered the distress signal I sent. Yes, Professor Hamilton. I heard you screaming like a little girl, and I thought that I'd best investigate. Oh, brag, Superman. Come and get what these guys got. Absolutely nothing works. A game where every single design decision was the wrong one. If a team of monkeys had been working on this game, they would have gotten something right, at least on accident. How in the hell could a video game turn out this bad? I don't even know what to say to lead into this review, so let's do this. So anyway, immediately when you start the game, you start flying through rings. This is the one thing that everybody remembers about this game. Flying through an endless stretch of rings. Flight controls are very sensitive. Superman turns on a dime, and moving the control stick just a little bit causes Superman to swerve way off course. I know it looks like I'm doing a good job here, but look at what I'm doing with the control stick. I'm jerking the control stick around like I barely have any control over Superman. Because I don't. The controls are so sensitive that I got used to flying by making spastic jerks on the control stick to nudge Superman in the direction I want him to go. This is the only way that I'm able to play this game. The flight controls are awful, and trust me, nothing pisses me off more about a game than barely functional controls because they're a constant annoyance that never goes away. You're allowed to miss 3 rings. If you skip any more than that, you have to start the course over. However, because the rings are so close together, going slightly off course one single time is enough to screw you. If you haven't gotten the controls down perfectly and you make one little mistake, Superman flies way the hell off course and you're boned. This game doesn't give you any opportunity or difficulty curve to get used to the controls. It's like the game expects you to have mastered these broken-ass controls as soon as you turn the game on. You have to get these controls down fast, or else you won't be able to beat the first level. And when I was a kid, I played this game for probably years, and I never got past this first level. I don't know if it's muscle memory from when I was a kid, or if I'm just naturally awesome, but I can actually get through these flying levels without too much trouble. However, just because I don't have too much trouble getting through these rings, that doesn't make these flying levels fun. I have never played a flying game that forced a player to fly through rings. And do you know why? Because flying through rings is not, never has been, and never will be fun. Some games like Star Fox 64 and TIE Fighter have you fly through rings as a training mode so that you can get accustomed to the controls, but to make flying through rings a primary gameplay mechanic like Superman does, you don't do that! You just don't do that! The good news is that the game has 3 difficulty screen until I press a button to exit it. You know, like every other video game in the history of time has ever done. You can review the last text box that was shown to you by pressing the L button, but you'd never know that unless you paused the game and looked up its controls. If you screw up the mission, you have to fly through the course of rings again just for another crack at the mini-mission. If you beat the mission, your reward is another course of rings! After you beat that course of rings, you have to pick up a car and carry it to the end of the street. You pick up the car by flying into it, but it's not working. Shit! The game didn't register that I was trying to pick up the car, and now I have to fly through the rings again. After you finish that task, you have to fly through another course of rings. After that, you punch out 4 of Luthor's goons. Then you fly through more frickin' rings! After that, you have to blow away 3 tornadoes with Superman's super breath. Yes, believe it or not, you actually get to use Superman's powers in this game. You activate his powers with the Z button, at least I think that you do. What's wrong now? I'm pressing the button, the super breath icon is in the corner of the screen. Why isn't Superman using his super breath? Blow, damn it, blow! Why the hell isn't this working? I didn't figure this out until I stopped the game and went to the game's practice mode. Do you want to know why Superman's super breath wasn't working? Because you have to pick up energy for Superman's powers before he can use any of them. Superman needs ammo to use his own powers. That's bullcrap. And Superman's breath sucks too. It has a range of like 1 foot and that's it. That's pathetic. That's not going to do jack squat to help you fight enemies. This is the big problem with Superman games. Most developers are afraid that if they give the player unfettered access to Superman's powers, the player will be too strong and the game will be way too easy. So rather than design around Superman's power so that the game is still challenging, when developers make a Superman game, they cut down all of Superman's power so that Superman can't do anything. Do you have any idea how sad it is that the only game that's gotten Superman right is Lego Batman 2? Superman has 3 other powers that you can use in the game. There's Heat Vision, which helps you kill some of the weaker enemies and does nothing else. Super Speed, which lets you run fast for a little while and does nothing else. And my favorite superpower, X-Ray Vision. And do you want to know why? After he'll slow down again. Either A, Superman keeps breaking wind and the force of the expulsion propels him forward, or B, this game's basic code is so crap that the game's processor is pushed to its absolute limits during basic gameplay and the game has to slow down to compensate. The game's instruction manual tries to explain the draw distance by saying that the distance fog is kryptonite fog. I'm sure they thought they were being clever, but guess what? I consulted with my friend Dan, who knows a lot more about Superman than I do, and he said that if there was that much kryptonite fog in this city, it would kill Superman and the entire city's population because kryptonite is radioactive. Oh, right, back to the game. You can forgive me for getting distracted from this piece of crap. After you blow away the tornadoes, you have to fly through another goddamn course of rings! Really? 5 different courses of rings in the first level of the game? Did that seriously sound like a good idea? No wonder the angry video game nerd gave up halfway through the first level. Yes, Superman 64 actually does have multiple levels. In fact, Superman 64 is broken up into 2 different kinds of levels. Some of the game's levels are flying, or ride levels, and after you finish your 5th course of rings, the first level mercifully ends, and you move on to the first maze level, the dam. The objective of this level is to stop Mala from blowing up the dam with bombs. I know that sounds simple, but trust me, this game's maze levels are even worse than its flying levels. All you gamers that could never beat the first level of this game, be thankful that you never experienced this hell. For starters, the dam level is full of robots. Some of them shoot lasers at you and some of them drop exploding mines on your head. There's just one tiny problem with the robots. They explode when you kill them. If you're too close to a robot when it explodes, it takes away a huge chunk of your health, and you only get 1 life for each level. You have to finish every single indoor level without dying once, and that's one of the things that drives you craziest in this game. You have to be very careful when fighting the enemies in this stage, because if a single enemy blows up in your face, you lose so much health that you're pretty much automatically screwed. I had to play this level running away from the enemies without fighting them, which I should never be forced to do, because that was the only way that I could survive this level. As for the level itself, just wait until you find out the kind of shit that you have to do to finish this level. First you find a keycard and you use it on the main computer to open the first chamber. You go into the water of the first chamber and you find a keycard to automatically open the side doors. You find a terminal in the tunnel off the main tunnel to drain the water in the main chamber. Once the water has been drained, you go talk to the dam workers who give you access to the other 2 main chambers. From there you have 10 minutes to disarm the bombs, and it took me about a dozen deaths and having to replay this level over and over again about a dozen times to get this far because the robots kept killing me. You also run into Mala, who you'd think would make for an interesting boss fight since she has all of Superman's powers, but all she does is run up and punch you, and you defeat her by punching her in the face a few times. It's less an epic boss fight and more a bout of rock'em sock'em robots. So now I have to figure out how to defuse these bombs. Punching the bomb does nothing. Interacting with the bomb with the B button does nothing. I found an ice breath power-up. Freezing the bomb does nothing. Freezing the bomb and then punching it does nothing. So what the hell do I do? I've tried everything and nothing works. Oh, you freeze the bomb until it falls down a little bit. So freezing the bomb and encasing it in ice doesn't work, but freezing the bomb slightly longer and encasing it in slightly thicker ice is what disarms the bombs. If the ice breath didn't work the first time, why would I think that it would work the second time? This game makes no sense! These indoor levels don't give you any remotely vague instructions on what you're supposed to do. It took me like 15 playthroughs just to figure out how to beat this level. These maze levels aren't built around puzzles, they're built around trial and error, wandering around each level until you figure out what you're supposed to do on accident. But at least this crappy maze level is over. What comes next? No! Not another flying level. Crap. And guess what? Now, the rings move. It sucked having to fly through the rings already, and now I have to do it while the rings are moving out of the way? Why does Superman have to fly through all these rings anyway? My heavens, a trail of rings has been stretched across the sky. I must fly through them in a perfectly sequential order, or thousands of people could be mildly amused by their presence. Yeah, you better get used to flying, because the pattern of this game is flying level, maze level, flying level, maze level. There are 7 of these damn flying levels throughout the game. Spend half of the game flying through rings. That's what people want in a Superman game. The 4th level of the game is LexCorp, where the pre-level briefing tells you that you're looking for information on where all of Superman's friends are. Right off the bat, take a look at the starting room here. Do you see how far into the room I can see? It's not very far, is it? If you dropped into this level with no instructions or guidelines, you just explore this opening room and you have to try and guess what you're supposed to do. This is why I think the maze levels are worse than the flying levels. The flying levels are actually pretty easy to beat once you master the game's controls, although granted, that's like the 13th labor of Hercules. One is a new circle of hell. If you explore the starting room in this level, you find 4 elevators, only one of which opens. However, you can't use the elevator, and every time that you try to use it, Lex makes fun of you. You don't want to play anymore? No, I don't want to play anymore! God damn you, contractual obligations! To get the elevator working, you have to find a piece of paper with 3 colors written on, and you have to kill all of the dark shadows on this floor. Because the game's draw distance is so crap, you won't be able to see any of the dark shadows until you're right on top of them. It's honestly shocking how not fun the game's combat is. Unless you feel like using your heat vision, which runs out of ammo really quickly, there are 2 ways to kill these enemies. You can punch enemies, but this requires getting up close to them, which puts you at the mercy of the game's awful, plodding walking controls. Yes, this game's the programmers somehow managed to screw up walking. Superman walks unbearably slowly, and if you try to turn too far while you're walking, Superman stops dead in his tracks until he stops turning. You're far better off flying around the levels if you actually want to get anywhere, except if you fly anywhere near a wall, you get stuck because of time. It's a simple puzzle to figure out, but you're given almost no time to figure it out. After you solve that puzzle, you go up one more elevator, and you find neatly typed up sheets of paper telling you where all of Superman's friends have been taken. Yes, I can just see Darkseid sitting down at a desk to type up this letter, can't you? Why couldn't Superman just get to Luthor's office by flying through the window in the first place? Why did I have to go through all that crap and go through that whole building just to get here? Why am I still playing this game? Why does this black hole of fail exist? I'm sorry. This game is too much concentrated fail for me to contain in one video. Stay tuned for part 2. I need to go play something good or else I'm going to kill myself. Previously on the Superman 64 review. And now, the continuation. And literally 5 seconds after you just rescued her, she gets captured again. To get to the new room where she's being held, you have to go to the loading docks and find a keycard that isn't there if you check for it before rescuing Lois the first time. So you go to the new room where Lois is being held, and if you're like me, you get caught off guard by kryptonite, die, and have to start the level over again. To escape the kryptonite, you have to operate 3 computers on the far side of the room, which you can't see because the game's draw distance is so bad. Then you go to a side room where you fight Metallo. So you're fighting a supervillain who's powered by kryptonite, which is Superman's greatest weakness. How could you possibly fight such a dangerous foe? You deck him in the face a few times, and then he runs away. Then you operate some more computers and you free Lois again. So you go exploring around the level until you find a green computer to shut off the machine that's spitting out robots, and the camera pans over so that you can see Lois has been captured again! You kill the robots by flying into them, and then you go into the room marked Zone 4 to operate another computer to unlock the room where Lois is being held. And if you operate the computer before operating the green computer, it doesn't work! But once you go back to the room where Lois is being held, she's nowhere in sight. Instead, you see several weird blue pillars. You're supposed to pick up the boxes in this room and set them on the pillars of light to free Lois. It took me like half an hour of wandering around this level to figure that out, because every other time that you pick up an item in this game, it explodes! Now, you're not going to believe this, But this level has not yet begun to suck, because now comes the most irritating portion of the game up to now. To make absolutely certain that Lois doesn't get kidnapped again, you have to escort her out of the building. The level is now freshly full of enemies, and if Lois gets shot too many times, you have to start the entire level over. If you do the smart thing and scout ahead